welcome to The Artful Chef. Thanks for coming back again today for another lesson on realistic drawing of the facial features. So far we have talked about the eye from the straightforward view. We've talked about the eye from the profile view. And now we're talking about the nose. How do we draw a nose straightforward? How do we draw it from the side? And all the different variances that come in different people's noses. So let's get started. So there are a lot of ways that you can draw noses because there are a lot of different types of noses. So I'm going to show you first the different types of noses, and then we're going to actually draw one from the front view and from the profile view. So I'm going to use a charcoal pencil here so that you can see. I'm just going to start with this slight little circle. That is the end of the nose, the little bulbous area at the end. I'm going to come up with a straight line on either side, remembering to draw very lightly because some of this will get erased or shaded out. So that's going to be the coming up the bridge of the nose, and then you're going to draw a line right through the middle of that little circle that you just drew. This is going to be our guide for the nostrils. So you're going to draw a little arch that comes up and over here. It will follow the curve of this circle down, and then it will come up and over here. So this is the basis of the nostril on there. Then you're going to come out. This is that curved edge that comes out of the side of your nose. And I'm just going to have this piece come straight in to that bridge. I'm not going to actually connect it. I'm leaving it a little loose. This would be a basic nose, a basic normal shaped nose. So if you curve that around, this, when you shaded it in, would become a darker area because this would be the nostril area and it would be within shadow. So this is a normal view. That's average. Most average people have this kind of a nose. Now, you do have people that have really thin angular noses. So to draw that, you would again begin with that circle at the end. You're going to have these lines, these narrow lines that come up, because an angular nose is going to be a little more narrow. Draw your line that comes across. Now, these little arches would not come out as far because it's a small angular nose. So we're just going to come in a tiny little arch here. We're going to come out, and we're going to, like I said, keep this angular. So to keep it angular, we're just going to come up like this. It's going to curve right on the edge and then angle up. So this would be a small angular nose. What if you wanted to do a large bulbous nose? Because there are people that have larger noses. You just start with a larger circle at the base, which would give you a wider bridge. Draw your line across the center. And then do your nostril arches. So a bulbous nose is probably going to be a little fuller on the sides, so round that off before you come up. And that's going to give you a larger nose. What if you have a smaller nose, but it's not angular? So what if you have one that's a little more rounded on the edges, but it's still small? So start with a smaller circle. These are your little arches that come out for your nostrils. Then you will just round it up. This would give you a skinny nose. Then coming over here, what if you're drawing a nose and someone that you're drawing has a very high nostril on their nose? If you start with your circle again, come up with the sides. To draw a higher nostril, your starting point, rather than being in the center of your circle here, would actually come a little higher in that circle. That's what's going to give you the look of a higher nostril. So now when you make your arch up and down, your nostrils are going to end up a lot higher than they would if you started in the center. So when you finish them off, you would have more of the tip of the nose coming down because it started up higher. So what if we were looking at this from the side view? If we were looking at this from the side view, we actually would begin with 2 circles. So the bigger circle is going to be the one that's farther away from the face. And then just a hair smaller back behind it and a little bit slightly at an angle would be where the back of the nose is, or where that curved part that's right here, it would be represented by a circle if we're drawing a profile view. So you would connect these with this little swoosh. This represents the nostril, and depending on how you're trying to show that, you would come in and this would be your curve of the nose. So you would erase part of this. This would be the tip of your nose. It would angle up. Here's the bridge where it meets the eyes, and then it comes out for the forehead. So this would be a side view, and then you would erase the unnecessary lines. So let's look at actually drawing and shading a nose appropriately. We're going to begin with a front view of a nose, and I'm just going to start with my circle at the end of the nose. And so because I'm doing the whole nose, I'm going to draw it a little bit bigger to begin with. Then I'm going to come up on my edges. Now I am drawing lightly because this is a charcoal pencil and I do want to be able to erase some of this later. I'm going to go in and I'm going to lightly put my line that comes across. I'm not going to draw it through the middle this time because I want to be able to erase this. And then I'm going to put my nostril guides here. They're going to arch. Then I'm going to add these sides that come out and taper up into the nose. Now at this point you have some unnecessary lines, so we're going to go ahead and erase some of these. Now I'm just using just a regular eraser that extends from here. You really could use any kind of eraser. The white erasers work really great. Pink erasers work well. Kneaded erasers work best if you have one of those. But really, as long as you are drawing light enough, you should be able to erase what you've done. So we're going to start putting shading and value in different areas so that we can create that realistic look of the nose. So the first thing that we notice is that nostrils tend to be a lot darker when you're drawing a picture. So we're going to color in the edge here and give it some shadow, some darker value. And I'm just going to smooth it out with my little tortillon. Now in class, my students use Q-tips, which work perfectly fine. You could use a tissue or a blending stump. Really anything that just evens out your graphite on your paper is going to be great. I would not, in small areas like this, recommend using your finger, only because your finger is a larger area and it's going to spread out a lot more than what you're wanting. But if you come down a little below where you just put that darker value for your nostril, with the extra graphite that ends up on whatever it is that you're using, it's going to blend down and give you a lighter value just below, which is going to be much more realistic for you. Now we're going to go in and we're going to add those different values that give this face its shape, or this nose its shape when you're drawing it on a face. You're always going to have some type of a light source when working with drawing pictures, realistic pictures of things. So typically you might have a little bit of shine on the edge of the nose, on the tip of the nose here, because it sticks out further away from the face. You also will have a lighter value in the center because this bridge sticks out further. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to roughly draw in an area that I want to try to keep lighter because this is where my highlight is going to be. I want to have a little bit of highlight here, and I want to have just a little bit over here on the edges because these parts of the face stick out further away from the actual face, so light's going to hit them differently. Now let's go in and begin to add value. So it's really important so that you don't end up with, when you shade like this and you have your pencil straight up and down, you get very noticeable lines when you're shading. So for more realistic shading, it's better to have as much of the graphite touch the paper as possible. So if you hold your pencil with an overhand grip, this is going to help control the pressure on your pencil, and it's also going to allow more of the surface of your graphite to touch your paper. So I'm going to add a light value over my entire surface just to begin. We're going to do this in layers because it gives you much more realistic. Even in the part where I added those little highlighted areas that I want to show, I'm going to add a little bit of graphite. And then because this is a larger area, I'm just going to go in with my finger and give this a little smudge. It is much better to blend as you go than to wait to the end, because if you blend as you go, you kind of know where you need things and where you don't. So I know that I want these darker corners to be a little darker. So with the same grip, I'm going to go back in and do another layer here. I'm going to avoid these areas where I want to add highlight. So I'm adding another row of graphite along the edge. I'm going to come in and do a little around this area where the tip of the nose is. Not the whole thing because, like I said, I want to highlight there, so I don't want to add any more color to that. I also want the sides to be a little darker along the edge of the nose going up, because where the nose meets the face, it's naturally, if you're looking at it straight forward, going to have a little darker value because the shadows of the way the light's hitting it. So I'm going to come up here, remember avoiding that center part, and I'm just going to start to blend, working from the edges inward. You never want to work out, because then you're affecting the actual skin of the face. Okay, so very quickly I'm going to go back and I'm going to erase some of what has gotten into my highlighted areas. And my line that I've caused by erasing is a little rough for me. It's a little too straight, so I'm just going to soften that up by using my already dirty tip to soften up that edge. The next thing I want to do is I want to create that skin tone around the edge of the nose. I want this to begin to look like a face. So I'm just going to very lightly with my overhand grip, I'm going to put a light value all around the outer edge. And I'm just going to blend that with my fingertip. Now you do notice that under a nose you have this little part that has like a little divot in. A lot of people have that. Yours, some may be more pronounced than others, but typically it's going to have a noticeable little ledge. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to add another little value right below the nose, and I'm just going to shade that. And when we start drawing the rest of the face and we draw our lips, this is an important connector area between the nose and the lips. So I'm happy with this so far, but I feel like my edges need a little bit more definition. So I'm just going to go back in and darken up the value just on the edge, because where this outer part of the nose meets the face, it's more of an instantaneous value change, meaning that it's a separate piece that meets another piece. So it's going to naturally have a darker value. Whereas as it gradually goes up, it tapers off onto the face. So that value is going to be a little less obvious as it goes up. So this is the basis on how to do a realistic nose from the front view. Now let's talk about how to do it from the profile. So remember I said over here, you're going to begin with, and I'll do this with my graphite pencil so it's a little easier to see. You're going to begin with 2 circles. Space them apart just a little bit depending on the size of the nose that you're trying to create. This little arch that curves around here, this is going to become the nostril. Then I'm going to follow the curve of my tip of my nose here. I'm going to come up. This will be where the eyes are, and then it starts to come out for the forehead. Now, lots of noses are different. You might have a nose that has a bump in it, and so if you want to add that bump in your nose, that would be the perfect location to put that. I'm also going to darken this area right here for this back curve. This is where the nostril flare meets the side of the face. And then I'm going to erase the unnecessary parts of the circles. So we don't need these anymore. And then we'll begin our details. So remember that the nostril is going to be darker because it's in shadow. So you're going to color this in your darker value. I'm going to come down to create where this nose comes and meets the lip. So I'm going to come down with a line like this very lightly. And then I'm going to start to add my different values. So remember that this same thing, it's going to have a little highlight that comes down the edge of the nose. I'm going to do an all over value. Remember to use your overhand grip. Do this all over value. Give it a light blend with your finger. And then we're going to go in and add that extra detail. So we're going to have a darker value here on the tip. We're going to leave it a little lighter here for a highlight. It's going to be a little darker around the edge here. And then under the nostril, you'll have a little bit of a shadow. Then up the edge of the nose. Then you're going to have some area out here you're going to darken. And then we will blend. So I do want to go back now that I've blended and erase a few things and add a few things. So I'm going to erase a little bit of my graphite coming down the nose to create that highlight. I want a little highlight here on the tip and maybe a little bit here. Now when I come back in, I can darken up the areas that need a little more definition. And I do want to define where this curve comes. And this would be our side view of our nose with our highlights. We have now given ourselves our area that we can add our eyes, and down below we can add our mouth if we were drawing the whole picture. One last thing I want to point out is, how do you take this and translate it into drawing an actual face? Now we will get into the actual dimensions of a face at a later video once we've learned all the different parts of the face. But if you, just for a quick guide, when you think about drawing a face and the location of the eyes, the location of the eyes are about the same width apart at the bridge of the nose as they are wide. So if you used a ruler, and if we wanted to use this nose as a guide, my bridge here at the top of my nose is about 1 inch wide. So if I made a little slight line here, and then I extended out 1 inch and 1 inch, then my eyes would be about that wide on my nose. So a guide to how far down the tip of your nose would come versus the eye itself is you find the iris. So if this is your center of your eye and this is your iris, the length of the nose, the tip of the nose from the iris, is going to be about 3 irises long. So if you drew 3 irises down on a realistic version of your face, that would be about the length that you need from the center of the iris to the tip of the nose. Much for joining me today on learning how to draw the nose from the front and the profile view. I hope you learned something new. Next week, come back and we will have a lesson on the ear and how to draw the specifics of that. Until next time, have a great day.